Good morning. Literacy. Literacy is one of those topics that I think does not get enough conversation in how we are raising and growing our children, as well as how we think about different topics. So we're going to get into that a little bit more in just a minute. But if you have not been here before, my name is Andrea, and this is Real Life with Andrea. So I am an inconsistent poster, unfortunately, but it is real life, and sometimes my life gets really busy and really complex, and I take my opportunities where I can to be able to post the things that are going on and things that I'm thinking about. So if you have not yet subscribed to the channel and you are looking for a place that is real and that you can find some good stuff at, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button so you're notified when I do post new videos, and I look forward to chatting with you. I love comments, so please comment, and to anything that I say, whether you agree or disagree. I'm all for disagreement, so that we can challenge each other in our thoughts processes, and that has to do right with literacy, our topic for today. So I'm going to be right back in just a few minutes to continue our discussion on literacy. All right, so I am sitting in the parking lot of the veterinary's office reading a book, and it is hot. So I'm gonna have to hold my phone today for this video, so it's gonna be a little bit awkward. That's okay, but because of the heat in the windshield, I can't have my phone up there. Anyway, so literacy, I'm reading this book called The Core by Lee Bortons. And for those of you who have not watched my videos before, I am a parent of 5. I have homeschooled 2 of the 4 older ones. The 2 oldest ones went through the public school system. My 2 younger ones came home in 3rd and 4th grade and were homeschooled through high school. And now I have a 5-year-old that I am homeschooling. And I'm also a foster parent, so I have different foster kids right now. I have 2 sisters, and they also go to the public school, of course. So my house is full of children, and so these are topics that whether they go to school or you're homeschooled, they're super important because we need to be able to support our kids' education and to build on it. Because unfortunately today the school is so busy with disciplinary problems and different things, like kids who just don't want to participate. It really puts a damper on the kids who do want to learn or need to have some extra encouragement, being able to really learn and really absorb some of these concepts. So I think when we think of literacy, we think of being able to read and to comprehend the text that you're reading. And I think that as I'm reading this book, when we think of literacy, the book is saying that when this book was written just a few years ago, American literacy, only 15% of adults were proficient at literacy. So there's a lot of different levels to literacy, from reading to reading comprehension to being able to take different texts and meld those together and form an idea, and to be able to then use that information to have an intelligent discussion with another person, to be able to understand lecture, to be able to understand all these things and pull them all together, and the Bible, and to use then use what's going on in the world and the Bible to be able to make sense of our faith, to make sense of what's going on in the world, to make sense of where we are at as far as being able, in the end times, and all these different things. So literacy is more than just some basic reading and comprehension. And so as parents, it's our job to really mold and foster that and have those conversations over dinner, or to say, hey, did you see in the news that this happened today? What do you think about that? And so again, I'm going to recommend this book. If anybody, even just, it's really great. How can you support your kids at home, even though you're not homeschooling? What can you do at home to supplement and to support the school, the education that they're getting at school? She's got some really great information in there, and some really basics on how to, we're talking about, sorry, I need to turn my car back on because it is blazing hot. We're talking about we're talking about homeschool. I'm talking about homeschooling because I homeschool. But life is education, and you as a parent are in charge of your children's education. Just because you send them off to school does not alleviate your responsibility to be sure that your children are growing up and being able to be contributing members of society, and that includes in conversations that have to do with being Christians and how does my faith relate to these everyday topics. How am I supposed to my children supposed to be able to communicate on topics, hot topics or even non-hot topics of how do these things that are going around the world relate to my faith, and how do I make decisions on what I think and what I believe. And that is literacy, and those are our responsibilities. So being able to take all these different texts and all these different inputs to be able to process them for myself and to be able to come up with a discussion, a debate, my point of view, and how that is supported through God's word is just so important for our kids to be able to really own their own faith and to be able to hold to those things as they get older and they grow. So now that I'm understanding this a little bit more now with my 5-year-old, we are talking about these things with every single text. Like, what do you think about that? How does that make you feel? What does God say about that? Even if it's a silly little poem, there's always something that can relate. So beginning to think in a way that says God is a part of 100% of our life in all of these discussions, whether they are hot topics or they're silly topics. Take a poem, Jack and Jill went up the hill. What do you think about that? Why did Jack and Jill go up the hill, do you think? And really begin to start, even at a young age, expanding their mind and their processes so that these things are not individual resources, but things that have a connection. How do I connect these things that I'm reading to my life so that my life, especially my Christian walk, the Bible, what I believe is a part of the whole pie. So work is a part of the pie, church is even a part of the pie, but my faith, my relationship with the Lord, my relationship with Jesus is the whole shebang. It's going to the park, it's going to school, it's going to church, it's going to work, it's taking care of my animals, it's everything. 100% of the pie I need to be able to relate God's word to. And so I'm particularly challenged right now to think of literacy as a bigger picture. It really is, and I am embarrassed to say that I have now raised 4 children into adulthood and did not understand how very important this topic is as we're raising our children. And I'm seeing it play out a little bit between my 2 older ones who went through the school system. And they are very good at regurgitating information that comes into them. They're having to learn now as adults how to process that and form their own opinions, because when you go through the school system, you're taught to believe their opinions. What they say is true. You go to college, what they say is true. We don't think, we don't develop our own opinions, and we don't discuss, or our opinions aren't valued, because especially if they're faith opinions, they are not important or not valid. So then my 2 younger ones, I did a little bit better job with, because they were at home and we did do a lot of discussing, and we tried to put our faith, or put God in the Bible, into everything. And so I see them a little bit better, being able to take all this stuff that's going around in the world and look at God's word and look at what they've learned as they've been growing up about how to walk the Christian faith and what God says about these things, and be able to talk intelligently with love to other people who disagree with them. And so being at home and learning that and watching that through the people that we interacted with has been a huge help. And so I'm looking forward to, as I am more intentional about this thing, Sebastian being even more able to pull all this stuff together and to be able to speak intelligently and form his own opinions and be able to share them with people with love and respect. So, and then of course with my homeschool kids as well. Okay, so I am back home from the veterinarian, and that was not good news, but that's another story for another video. So back to literacy. Let me grab my book. So interesting information about literacy is that in 2005, they came out with the National Assessment of Adult Literacy estimated that only 13% of Americans were proficient, which is able to use complex and challenging texts in prose literacy. 45% were at intermediate level, handling moderately challenging text. 29% were at basic, which is just simple everyday tasks, and 14% were below basic in comprehending only simple and concrete text. So that is interesting, and I believe I read someplace else that as we go more to short form text messaging, tweeting, reels, all these things, that we are getting our information in short bursts. So that makes our brains no longer really able or willing without practice to read long texts, because we're getting the information in short, and because that's what we want, we're believing what we hear. And while a lot of the information that out there is credible, there is information that is incredible, not credible. So it is also incredible. So even like people like me, I'm posting a video out there and you're watching it and you're believing what I say, and thank you for that. But the reality is that no matter what you're listening to, we all need to be taught that what we hear, we need to then confirm, because that's how we know, that's how we make our decisions for ourselves to decide what is true and not true. And so much of that, as I'm talking with other people and other adults, is even in things like, okay, so we're talking about abortion. Go back to God's word. You hear a lot, what's going on, and although God's word does not specifically talk about abortion clinics or doctors who do abortions, it talks about people, it talks about love, it talks about respect, it talks about murder, it talks about being formed in the womb. It talks about all of those things, and when you put all of that together, you should be able to form your argument, per se, for your point of view on these topics. And that is really something that we need to work on as parents with our children. I know I've said that already. I'm going to reiterate that, is that as parents, whether your kids are in school, whether they're young or old, we need to start challenging them to think for themselves, to go to these texts, to read them, to take the time. And even for me, it is hard sometimes because I'm busy, and then you start reading a text and it's kind of boring. But it's the information that I need in order to make the decision that I need to make. I need to stop. I need to read that. I need to glean the information that I need to glean out of that text and put it with what I'm hearing over there, what I'm seeing over here, and of course, the ultimate text of God's word. So I am being challenged on this, and I am hoping to just do better at that, whether it's my kids who are in school or my kid who I am homeschooling, or even the homeschool students that I am working with in our homeschool group. That literacy, that reading, that comprehension, and then being able to speak intelligently on what I just read. It has to be a core and foundational piece of our educational journey. All right, well, thank you for joining me today. If you have any comments or questions, please comment or question. I will put a link to this book in the notes so that you can find it. Again, whether your kids are homeschooled or not, this is a really great book for helping us as parents on what our part is on their educational journey. So thank you for joining me. Comment. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.